My name is Piers. Detective Piers. I've walked the streets of this city longer than I care to admit, chasing shadows that others were too afraid to see. People think being a detective is about solving crimes. But really, it's about staring into the darkness and convincing yourself you're still human afterward. I'm not sure I always succeed. The rain fell in a steady, oppressive drizzle, turning the cobblestone streets into a slick maze of reflections and shadows. I pulled my trench coat tighter around me, though it did little to keep out the chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Tonight, I was hunting whispers. The call had come in late, a frantic voice on the other end. "Detective, you need to see this. Something's wrong at the Hollow." I knew the Hollow. Everyone in this town did. A stretch of forested hills, mist-covered at night, with old stone ruins scattered through it, remnants of a forgotten village that had burned centuries ago. Most avoided it after dark. Even the cops. But I went anyway. The first thing I noticed as I approached the ruins was the smell, sharp, metallic, and sweet, like copper mixed with decay. And then I saw it, a circle of figures cloaked, standing around a fire that hissed as it licked the wet earth. They didn't move when I stepped closer, didn't even glance up. It was as if I were a ghost intruding on a ritual older than the town itself. I ducked behind a broken wall, watching. There were 6 of them. They moved in slow, deliberate patterns, chanting in a language I didn't recognize, yet something about it tugged at the edges of memory, something from childhood nightmares. I fumbled for my notebook, scribbling as fast as I could, red symbols, inverted crosses, what looks like a totem carved from bone. Then the wind shifted, carrying a word I understood perfectly. "Piers." I froze. The chanting stopped. The figures turned as one, though none of their faces were visible beneath the hoods. And in that instant I knew, this wasn't just some local kids playing dress-up, nor some desperate cult making noise in the woods. They knew I was coming. The fire flared brighter, shadows dancing over the twisted expressions of something, not human, that leaned just beyond the flames. One of the cloaked figures raised an arm, pointing at me. A chill ran down my spine. I had a bad habit of facing monsters alone, but this was something different. Something calculated. I ran. By the time I reached my car, soaked and shivering, my mind was racing. The Hollow had always been a place of whispers and legends, disappearances that no one dared investigate, rumors of blood and sacrifice. But I'd never seen anything like this. The symbols, the chanting, the sense of intentional surveillance. It was organized. Intelligent. Dangerous. Back at the precinct, the other detectives tried to laugh it off. "You saw kids with hooded robes and a campfire," one said. "Probably a weird Halloween party." But their laughter rang hollow. I didn't expect them to understand. I didn't even know if I did. I pored over every missing person report from the last year, scanning for connections. Names, ages, disappearances near the Hollow or surrounding forests. A pattern began to emerge, a chain of disappearances, always in late autumn, always near the ruins. No witnesses, no evidence. And now, I had seen the group firsthand. They were real. Too real. Something told me this was only the beginning. The Hollow had opened its mouth, and I had stepped too close. Tomorrow, I would go back. Better prepared. But tonight, I sat in my office, notebook in hand, staring at the sketches of the ritual symbols, and listened to the rain hammering against the window. Somewhere in the dark, the Hollow whispered again, and this time, I thought I heard it laughing. I woke the next morning to the sound of my phone buzzing across the desk. The rain had stopped, but the streets were slick, reflecting the gray, unwelcoming light of dawn. I hadn't slept more than a couple of hours. My dreams were a jumble of chanting, fire, and shadowy figures, always watching, always waiting. The message on my phone was from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have seen us. Be careful." No signature. No explanation. Just a warning. I shoved the phone into my coat pocket and headed to the precinct. The office smelled of stale coffee and paper. Detective Monroe looked up from her pile of case files. "You look like hell," she said. "What's got you up at, whatever hour this is?" I didn't answer. I opened the missing person reports I'd been combing through last night. There were 6 cases in particular, spanning the last 3 autumns, all from neighborhoods bordering the Hollow. Each disappearance shared a strange similarity. Victims were last seen near wooded areas. No signs of struggle, no witnesses. Each left behind a small, personal object at the scene: a locket, a watch, a notebook. I flipped through the files, noticing a scribbled mark on one of the police sketches. It looked like a rune, similar to the symbols I'd seen by the fire. I snapped a photo with my phone and pinned it to my board. Something connected these disappearances to what I'd witnessed last night. Something human, but guided by something else. Later, I drove back toward the Hollow, keeping to the shadows. The forest seemed to breathe around me, branches scraping against the wet asphalt as if warning me to turn back. I parked a few hundred meters from the ruins and made my way on foot, flashlight in hand, notebook ready. The first thing I noticed this time was the ground, soft, muddy, and marked by footprints. They weren't human. Too long, too narrow, clawed at the edges. My pulse quickened. Whoever, or whatever, was here, they had come and gone recently. Then I saw it, a small stone altar, half buried in moss. Strange carvings covered it, almost pulsating in the dim light. In the center lay a single item, a child's music box. Rusted, scratched, but unmistakable. I picked it up carefully, flipping it open. The tune it played was warped, discordant, yet familiar, like a lullaby I'd heard in fragments during nightmares. A sound made me spin around, soft whispers, unintelligible, echoing through the trees. I froze, listening. Then a voice, low, deliberate, almost hypnotic, called my name. "Piers!" I didn't wait. I ran back to my car, heart pounding, breath ragged. Back at the precinct, I cross-referenced the music box with the missing person reports. It belonged to one of the victims, a girl named Lila Harper, missing for 2 years. Her disappearance had gone cold, unsolved. But now, seeing the music box here, I knew someone had been performing rituals in the Hollow, keeping her memory, or her essence, alive for some dark purpose. By mid-afternoon, I was in the library, poring over local history. The Hollow had been the site of strange occurrences for centuries: disappearances, strange symbols carved into stones, and rumors of a cult worshipping a figure they called the Hollow One. Some claimed it was a spirit, others a man who had vanished long ago. Regardless, the stories all led back to the same place I had seen the circle of cloaked figures. I realized then that I was no longer investigating a simple missing person case. I was chasing a shadow that had walked these hills long before I was born. And the Hollow knew I was coming. The Hollow had a way of speaking to those foolish enough to enter. Every snapping branch, every rustle of leaves felt like a word in a language I couldn't fully understand. By the time I returned that evening, darkness had draped over the ruins like a velvet shroud, and the fog that crept between the trees seemed alive. I wasn't alone for long. From the mist they emerged. 6 figures, cloaked, moving with a precision that defied human gait. The fire was already lit, casting flickering shadows over carved stones. And then I noticed it, symbols etched into the dirt around the circle, the same symbols I had seen before, but more elaborate. I ducked behind a fallen tree, trying to observe without being seen. My flashlight was tucked away, my notebook ready. The figures began chanting, a low, rhythmic hum that seemed to vibrate through the ground. In the center of the circle, I saw a small cage, wooden, crude, and inside it a girl. Her eyes were wide with terror. I couldn't make out her face clearly, but something about her, her posture, the way she clutched herself, felt familiar. My stomach twisted. Lila Harper? Could it really be her, alive after 2 years? One of the cloaked figures stepped forward, raising a hand. The chanting stopped abruptly, as if the air itself had been cut. A hush fell. And then the figure spoke. "Piers, we've been expecting you." My blood ran cold. They knew my name. They knew I would come. And yet, I couldn't turn away. I watched as they performed a ritual I could barely comprehend. Symbols drawn in blood and ash, whispered words in a tongue I did not recognize, gestures that seemed to bend the shadows themselves. The girl's cage rattled, and for a moment, I thought she might be calling my name. I needed a plan. Charging in would be suicide. I was alone. But I had to know the truth. I took careful notes, memorizing their movements, the order of the chant, the patterns in the symbols. Every detail mattered. Suddenly, one of them turned sharply, scanning the forest. My breath caught. I had been spotted. Not by sight, but by some other sense. They spoke again, the voice echoing unnaturally. "You do not belong here. Leave, or become part of the hollow." That was enough. I retreated, careful not to break any branches, retracing my steps through the fog. My heart pounded with a mix of fear and adrenaline. They weren't just human. Something about their presence, their ritual, felt wrong, as if they were connected to something older, something that didn't belong in the world I knew. Back at my office, I spread my notes and sketches across the table. The ritual, the symbols, the music box, it was all connected. And one horrifying thought gnawed at me: they weren't just performing for themselves. They were building something, summoning something, and I had no idea how far it reached. I needed allies. But who could I trust? The precinct would never believe me. The townspeople whispered about the hollow in fear, but no one acted. I made a decision. I would return. I would watch. I would learn. And if necessary, I would fight. Because the hollow had already chosen me. The rain had returned by the time I left my office that night, heavy and insistent, hammering against the windshield as I drove toward the hollow. I didn't know what I would find, only that I couldn't stay away. The whispers from the previous nights echoed in my mind, urging me forward, pulling me deeper into the darkness I had spent a lifetime avoiding. I parked farther from the ruins this time, knowing the cult had sensed me before. My flashlight cut through the mist like a knife, illuminating twisted roots and broken stones. Every step felt deliberate, as if the forest itself was guiding me, or warning me. Then I saw them. The figures were already moving, assembling in a pattern that matched the symbols I had sketched in my notebook. The girl, Lila Harper, was there again, eyes wide, silent, trembling. She did not struggle. She did not cry. She simply stared, as if frozen by fear or by something far older than her captors. I hid behind a tree, heart hammering. I had to understand the ritual. The cloaked figures began chanting again, the words rolling off their tongues like smoke. The symbols in the dirt glowed faintly in the firelight, as if alive, pulsating with each intonation of their voices. And then I saw it, at the center of the circle, a figure taller than the others, wearing a mask carved from bone. Its presence was oppressive, unnatural. Even through the firelight, I could feel its gaze, a cold intelligence that reached into me, naming my fears before I could think them. The masked figure raised its arms, and the air seemed to vibrate, heavy with expectation. One of the other cloaked figures stepped forward, holding something in their hands, a vial of dark liquid that shimmered unnaturally. The ritual was about to reach its climax. I couldn't stay hidden any longer. I needed to act. Slowly I edged closer, careful not to snap a branch. But a whisper floated on the wind, soft and deliberate. "Piers!" The voice wasn't outside. It was inside my head. I stumbled, panic rising, and that was all it took. A branch cracked underfoot. The cultists froze. The masked figure turned, and I felt it before I saw it, a presence that made the air itself heavy, pressing against my chest. Then the chanting stopped. Silence fell, deep and absolute, broken only by the distant, muffled sound of my own heartbeat. The tallest figure began walking toward me, slow, deliberate. Shadows stretched unnaturally, crawling along the ground like living things. My instincts screamed to run, but my legs refused to move. I was rooted, caught in the gaze of something not human, something older than the town, older than the hollow itself. And then I understood. The ritual wasn't just for them. It wasn't for Lila. It was for me. I bolted. Adrenaline surged as I ran through the fog, branches tearing at my coat, the whispers clawing at the edges of my mind. Behind me, I could hear pursuit, soft, deliberate footsteps, impossible to place exactly in the darkness. By the time I reached my car, lungs burning, I knew the truth. The hollow wasn't just a place. It was alive. And whatever they worshipped, whatever the ritual sought to awaken, it had marked me. That night I didn't sleep. Every shadow in my apartment, every creak of the building, felt like the hollow itself pressing in. The symbols, the chanting, the masked figure, they were no longer confined to the forest. They were inside me. And I knew one thing with terrifying clarity: the final confrontation was coming. I knew it had to end tonight. The hollow had been whispering to me for weeks, tugging me deeper into its shadows, and I could no longer pretend I had a choice. I drove to the ruins under a sky so black it seemed to swallow the town whole. Rain pelted the windshield, lightning illuminating twisted trees like skeletal hands. I didn't bring backup. There was no one I could trust. I had to face this alone. The hollow greeted me with silence. No chanting. No fire. Only fog that slithered along the ground, thick and alive. The ruins were empty, or so I thought, until I saw her, Lila Harper, standing at the center of the circle, eyes wide but expressionless. She wasn't shackled this time. She was free, but not alive, not really. From the mist they emerged. 6 figures, cloaked, their movements precise, deliberate. And then the masked figure appeared, taller than the others, bone-white mask glinting in the faint light. Its presence radiated cold, ancient intelligence. "You've come," it said, voice a chorus of whispers, echoing from nowhere and everywhere. "The hollow has chosen you." I raised my gun, but my hands shook. They didn't flinch. They didn't need to. The hollow itself seemed to twist the air around them, pressing against my chest, bending reality. "You've seen too much," it continued. "Too much fear, too much knowledge. You cannot leave." And then I saw it, the altar. Symbols etched in the earth, glowing faintly, resonating with the pulse of the hollow. The cultists began their chant. I realized what they had been building all along: a doorway, a summoning of something older than man, older than the forest itself. Fear clawed at my mind, but I forced myself to think. Every ritual, every symbol I had studied, every note I had taken, I could use it. I had learned their pattern, memorized the flow, and I knew the weak point. The rhythm of the chant depended on the alignment of their movements. I stepped forward, shouting, breaking the rhythm. The masked figure turned, rage in the hollow spaces behind the mask. The chant faltered. Shadows writhed, pulling at the fog, twisting toward me with hungry intent. I struck the altar with my flashlight, smashing the stone and scattering the carved symbols. The cultists screamed, not human screams, but something otherworldly, and the fog recoiled, as if stung. Lila collapsed to the ground, her eyes blinking as if waking from a deep trance. The masked figure lunged at me, impossibly fast. I sidestepped, slamming the broken altar between us. Its shriek tore through the air, chilling me to the bone. The others scattered, screaming, retreating into the forest. The hollow seemed to shrink, retreating with them. I grabbed Lila and ran, through the mud, through the fog, until the forest ended and the town appeared before us. She clutched my arm, whispering something I barely heard. "Thank you?" But even as we reached safety, I knew the hollow had not released me completely. Its whispers lingered in my mind, echoing in every shadow. The cult was broken, the ritual interrupted, but the forest waited. Patient. Hungry. I had survived. I had stopped them, for now. But the hollow waits for all of us. And I knew, deep down, it would call again.